Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Wednesday. I'm Dave DeFore here with Mo Keel and Seth Partnow. So that means it's Nerder, she wrote. Guys, we're a little over a week away, 8 days away from the trade deadline. So a lot of stuff happening. But we got to start with last night's games. Joel Embiid got hurt. He goes into this matchup with the Warriors. He's missed the last few games. Obviously, he heard a lot in the media about, just ducking Jokic and not playing in big moments and not playing against good teams. So he played against the Warriors, who are not a good team, and sustained what looks like a new injury to his knee when Jonathan Kuminga diving for a loose ball lands on his knee. It looked painful. Clearly he was hobbled in this game. And I just don't know how to feel about this, if this makes sense. Like, should he play hurt? No. Did he get hurt in a freak play? Yes. Are the two necessarily correlated? No. But are they completely separate? Also, no.
So there's two different things here. There's the cumulative injury risk that's like, I'm tired, I do something bad. And then there's the every time I step on the court, something could happen. And there's not like a hard and fast line between the two. But this was the actual injury here was pretty clearly on the floor, people run into each other, thing happened. Now, the fact that he was hobbled, like, I don't think he looked very good, like, physically in this game before then. Like, should he have played to begin with? And this whole saga of the injury last Friday to the Denver game to now, it was Thursday when he actually got hurt initially. There's a whole lot of different things to break down. Like, there's the injury report shenanigans. There's the pressure based on the sort of the previous matchups. There's the 65 game rule. So I don't know which one of those you want to kind of start to tackle now. But I think we do need to be clear that the injury, the acute injury he suffered was just, you step on the court, that could happen.
Right. Exactly.
Look, he did not look good. He was hobbled on it. He shouldn't have played in this game, if you want my honest opinion. And I'm going to say this, and he was bullied into this game by us. And I mean us, the media, the 65 game rule as well, and all of these things. Like, he played this game when he shouldn't have played this game. Like, let's just be honest about it. Like, yeah. I was pissed and disappointed when it was a late scratch against Jokic. I even messaged you guys. I literally defended him last week, went on a rant and was pissed and was like, damn, But he clearly, when he was on the court in this game, shouldn't have played. He should have been sitting out. And it's the injury was a freak injury. It's something that could happen. Like Seth said, anytime you step on the court, could be any guy, all of that stuff. Take that out. He was hurt before that.
Yeah.
His leg wasn't right. He was going to end up having to sit longer. I mean, we should have sat this game out and gotten his body right in all of these things. And I think this is a massive blow in that, like, he shouldn't have been on the court in this game. And now the Sixers season, we're waiting on an MRI. We don't know when that might come when we're recording, might come afterwards, might be nothing, might be a big thing, might be a bone bruise, who knows, like all of those things. It's going to affect their season and all of this stuff. And I think I didn't mind the 65 game rule, but I didn't think that would solve the problem of load management that the NBA has, because it's an organizational issue and not a player issue. And I think we're seeing it now where it's actually going to cost them, because guys are trying to make sure they play. Look at Tyrese Halliburton.
Well, this is a bit of a birdshot situation, right? As far as the solution. And guys with legitimate injuries are getting pulled into this and wrapped up. I don't think anyone, any fan, anyone in the NBA, anybody who devised the 65 game rule wants to see guys playing hurt. Number one, it's suboptimal product. It's not good to watch. Joel Embiid was not fun to watch last night. As a matter of fact, like, it was a little bit distressing because I know what this guy looks like when he's healthy. I don't want to see him at 60% or whatever he was. So he's kind of getting pulled into this thing. And I think it is, like Seth said, it's a little bit of everything. There's media pressure to play. There is the 65 game rule. Another situation is that your salary is impacted by the awards, and now the awards are impacted by the games played. And so you have the situation with Tyrese Halliburton where he may miss out on $41 million in future earnings. Now, look, I'm not going to sit and shed tears for guys, that are going to make a couple hundred, $500 million. I look, I understand this, but this is actually affecting his livelihood, and he's injured. He's a professional athlete. Like, these things happen. So I think that this summer, I'd love to see, number one, take the money away. Don't tie it to awards. This Apple update with these thumbs up is killing me. So you have to take away the financial part of this that's tied to awards. And if you're going to have the 65 game threshold for awards, that's totally fine. I actually am okay.
I don't think it is. I think it's.
I don't love it, but if that's what you're saying, like, the awards are separate from the money. That I think from a labor perspective, the union should absolutely be pushing to do that. The rest of it is, awards are. I'm not going to say they're fake. They're real. They're given out, but they don't matter. The money does. The other stuff matters. It's not like anyone's being disqualified from playing in the playoffs, right? Like, we all agree that this is a championship. You're going for championship. So if Joel Embiid plays 50 games and he's still eligible for the playoffs, like, that's fine. MVP doesn't matter as much to me. So
I just briefly want to talk about, Mo mentioned that he got one of you two with that he got bullied into playing in this game, and I think there's some of that. I think the Sixers organization bears some culpability for this, because I think he hurts himself. He hurts himself going in. The fact that he didn't show up on the injury report in Denver and then was a late scratch, I think did him a disservice, in that if he's hurt, he's hurt. We saw him get hurt. And it's just like, when it happened, like, I was talking to a friend who was going to be flying into Denver to cover the game, and he was at the previous game, and is like, well, guess he's out. And it was a reasonable, and so they by, like, either by oversight or intentionality, like, not owning up to the severity of that last injury, put additional pressure on him. That, like, this, if he'd have missed the game after getting his knee rolled up in the game previously, like, it's, he hadn't played in Denver again. But at the same time, this is clearly bad luck. Like, this is clear. Like, and instead it's like, will he or won't he? And so it makes it sound like a day-to-day pain tolerance, his choice kind of thing, which I think, based on what we saw of him yesterday, clearly wasn't the case.
That's what they were doing yesterday.
Yeah.
Will he play? Won't he play? Like, it was literally the same situation. Look, Embiid should be on the injury report every game, whether he's fully healthy or not. I get the updates from the Lakers media stuff. LeBron James, questionable, or whatnot, or, each game in that sense, and it's like, okay, so it's like he has that coverage. Seth, you're right in that the organization did a poor job. One, on the optics of it, I think they did a poor job keeping him from that game yesterday. Like, you're genuinely hurt.
And this is the fundamental thing about load management. Sorry for cutting off, Mo, but this is the fundament. Is like, it's always treated as, like, player chooses to sit out, when this is a failure of a team doing what teams have been doing that has caused the load management, is looking at him being like, I know you want to go, but not tonight, big fella. And taking that club out of teams' bags the optics of it. Oh, we're not going to let guys sit out. Well, now the guy has to sit out. Right. And who did we help here by releasing this toothless press release of a rule that it has no effect anyway? Because, like, if a guy plays 64 games, he's not winning anything anyway. Like, the voters have been reasonably good about, like, oh, well, he only played 58 games, so, like, he's great, but we can't.
How much of this, though, guys? Look, the TV deal, it's looming. The new media rights deal, whatever we're going to call it, because it's going to be more than just TV, is looming. And the NBA is putting out the message to try to counter message the idea that it's a load management league. Players don't play, stars don't show up. That is in the zeitgeist.
But they're trying to.
This rule is trying to undo.
They're mistaking, like, a press release for action. on
Right.
how to
I mean,
actually.
it's the NBA. This is what
Yeah.
they like to do.
Right. No,
right?
I mean, I think that's that like, look, we're doing something. We're doing nothing, but we're doing something because we said we're doing something, and that's what this is. And it's I guess the only surprising thing, I don't even know if it is surprising, is it took this little time for that to get exposed for the nonsense that it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dave, the TV rights deal for sure plays a part in it. And the conversation around it of like the regular season doesn't matter. I actually want to fight everybody that says that because I think it's a dumb fucking statement in this, and whether it be a player or a fan or all that stuff. Because look at all the teams who haven't cared about the regular season over the years. And I'm looking at the Clippers, right? They hadn't really given a shit about the regular season all the years, and they flamed out many years. They had 1 year they went to the conference finals, and and that was great for them. But they really haven't had the run everybody thought. Look at them now. Ty Lue even said, like, we have to care about the regular season. Kawhi has not missed a lot of games. And when he has, it's been full on hip injury stuff that, he'd fallen on his hip or something like that. They're right there in the West, and I think they're one of the favorites to come out of the Western Conference. To me, it's them in Denver if everybody's fully healthy. And I think that's the season matters. Jimmy Butler has come out and said the regular season doesn't matter. Kyrie Irving has come out and said the regular season it doesn't matter. Look at the standings today. Both their teams are in the play-in tournament. That's why you can't rest. You want to be able to rest the week before the playoffs and not have to play in the play-in tournament. And don't give me the thing of, well, the Heat went to the finals last year from the play-in tournament team. That's that was a fluke in that sense, because look at the way they're playing now, and they might do it, they might not, but like, that rest matters. Don't tell me the regular season doesn't matter. That's important, man. You want to be out of that play-in tournament, and I think that's a big thing there in that stuff. And I think the regular season matters, and I think we're seeing guys care more about it.
I think so, and I just want to like square the circle on this. And it's unfortunate to me that the avatars of load management discussion have been Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid. Because these are players like, Embiid is a massive human being who has had significant injury issue.
None of us can relate to being 7'1",
Yeah.
310 pounds. And look at how he moves. I mean,
and this is a guy who missed his first 2 years in the league because of it.
Right.
Like this is it. Like the fact that his career has even lasted this long is a testament, I think, to him being managed through this. And Kawhi is a guy for the last, basically last 5-ish years, like has had a legitimate like condition that really affects his ability to play multiple games in short spans of time. So it's like, these are like we've seen this in all sports. There are guys who can only go so often but they're good enough that you make it work. And the fact that these two guys have become the avatars for this practice we wish didn't exist, when these are the two guys for whom it is most appropriate, possibly in the entire league, I think has been unfortunate.
Let me ask you guys a question real quick about Kawhi, because I wonder if this perception with him, because it's become a Kawhi never plays, doesn't want to play, whatever you want to call it, doesn't care. When it really started as a degenerative condition, coming off the Zaza Pachulia, so the whole ankle situation. If Kawhi wasn't in San Antonio for that original stretch where he was missing games and he wanted out and there was all the drama around it, would we feel the same way about Kawhi? We would just maybe say, like we did with Brandon Roy, oh, well, you know what? That's just one of these guys. If he can play 55, 60 games, like, we're good. You get to the playoffs. I think it's a little bit of an unfair rep for missing games versus actually, like, he has a legitimate condition that he has to manage. It's almost like having a bad back. I mean, he's going to have good days and bad days. And I think that if he isn't in San Antonio with the mystery surrounding his injury that first season that he was going through all this, maybe it's not the same.
No, I don't agree. And I also think he has I think he is actually one of those dudes who I think he does do a lot of the I'm not playing tonight. The stories we have heard over the seasons with the Clippers is that, like, they didn't know a lot of times. And that's the organization themselves not knowing if he's coming in or not and playing tonight or whatnot. So, like, I give Embiid the doubt you guys are talking about. Kawhi does not get the benefit of the doubt for me on that, just from what we know over the past few years with his stint with the Clippers and the way things were going for a while. This season has been pleasantly surprising in the way he has gone about it. And here's the other thing, and this is the important thing I think that maybe even these organizations are missing and the sports science guys are missing a little bit. Part of it is playing is conditioning your body to it. Sitting out a few nights and then going hard again may not be as good, as smart of a way of going about it and all of those things. I think there's a lot of questions in terms of the science. I think it's a little bit more to it than that. And I think this is the best he's looked.
And especially these guys don't practice, right? Like they don't practice. So the games are how they stay in game shape, for a lot of them. I know that some guys do off-day cardio, but I do think that the games are super important.
Yeah, it just matters in terms of that and keeping yourself in shape. Like he's playing more games consecutively and he looks really good. Let's go look at the years he was load management. How good did he look in all of those games compared to now? It's not the same.
And speaking of body, like I think Embiid, if he didn't take it, he's in really good shape. I think Embiid is in really good condition. Obviously, the Shirley Temples don't come up anymore, right? With Joel Embiid. And if he wasn't in this kind of condition and he was getting a little bit of flack for being injured, I think maybe it's not as bad. But I'm with you. I just don't think anybody can relate to being that big and the beating that your body takes. I don't know. He's an incredible athlete, and I think part of that is he exposes himself to being banged up. That it? Are we good with load management? All right. You can just move on. I think Seth might have frozen here.
Seth froze for a moment.
Yeah, there he is. He's back. All right. So the trade deadline, guys, 8 days away, as I said at the top of the show. I want to talk a little bit about some strategy and process for teams as they go into the deadline. And then we've got a little game that we're going to call fish or cut bait with some players that we think teams need to make some decisions on. But going into this deadline, we have a new CBA for teams. So this is the first deadline under the new CBA. We obviously know that it's going to be harder and harder for teams to, in that upper echelon, once you get to the second apron, approaching the second apron, it's going to be hard to add significant talent to your team at the deadline. So what are some of the strategies that you guys feel like teams are employing going into the deadline? Is this fully thinking about this season? How do we get better for the next few months? Or do you expect a lot of these really good teams to think longer term and look to get a guy that might be there for 2 or 3 years from now?
I think it depends a lot on the team. And I think this hits on a point that Mo made last week when we were talking about the Bucks changing coaches. And we gave them, and I think we should reemphasize it enough, like the honest assessment of where you are as a team and how that affects your strategy. Now, in the Bucks case, they were like, all right, we've won some games, but we're not good enough to win the title, and we're in a situation where we don't have enough years where we're in a position to win the title left that we can wait on this. And so I think that sort of self-assessment plays into this as well. I think that, if we want to look at two different teams that are, that are high up the standings, that are maybe at different spots in terms of where they need to go, it would be, and the Bucks don't have a lot to trade, so they might not be super active. But you compare the Bucks to, like, my favorite, the Thunder, and the desperation, this year, that's all we care about. We'll worry about next year is where they have to operate. Whereas a team like the Thunder that's at the beginning of, or potentially the beginning of their run, is maybe in a different spot. And then the maybe a team more in the middle like the Celtics has to maybe do a little more balancing of those. So I think that's the first part, is being like really, really hard-eyed and honest with yourself as a team. Where are we? How close are we? How long is our legitimate window? And that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're a good team, because we're good, everything's perfect, is very tempting.
Yeah, I think that's the scenario. It just comes down to, this is when you have your hard truths. Like front offices have like retreats during the season to really kind of figure out what are we, and maybe it's not a retreat, maybe it's just a meeting in the office where the guys all sit and discuss where they're going and things like that, and the intel they've heard through the course of the season. And I think the deal in terms of like the strategy for all of these teams, like, I mean, Seth nailed it, right? Like the Thunder, everybody's pushing for the Thunder to make some sort of all-in trade and go get the guy. Like, why? Why? Like they're just starting their run. Like, why are we trying to? We see it. Teams make these trades, and like, okay, if you've now jumped the timeline to like, hey, we're just starting to. You better win right now, because this, and this is coming. And like we talked about with the CBA, the first apron and second apron, like there's going to be a lot of ramifications and all those things. Phoenix is a team that should, I don't know if they have anything, but like that's the team that needs to do something if they're going to make a move, because they're at the end of their timeline, similar to the Bucks, because KD ain't getting any younger. And I think there's a lot of that stuff, the Clippers and so on. But the big thing for me, Dave, just going into this trade deadline is I think it's going to be a boring one. I think we're done with trades. I think we're like major ones. I don't know. My confidence on DeJounte Murray getting moved is like decreased by the day.
Is DeJounte Murray, is that a major trade? I mean, I think it's maybe there's level. Is he going to be the best player traded possibly? Like, is he
on the deadline maybe, but like
right
in a season where Harden, Pascal, and OG all got traded.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think to steal some of Mo's favorite. I think that a high likelihood of a player being the most impactful guy moving at the deadline has a last name Bogdanovich.
That's true. I mean, there's two of them that are on the block.
Yeah.
You're just playing the odds game. This is you
Also,
in your old poker days going
also,
like
Bruce
there's two
Brown,
of them.
Bruce Brown is out there, and he could be I think a major piece come playoff time for a team.
But these are the level of players we're talking about.
Yeah. It's the Derek
Malcolm
White
Brogdon.
trade.
Yeah.
It's Derek White. It's that type of stuff in those things. And it was amazing in the sense of like that's the trades we're going to get this year. And there might be a trade where we're all going to be like, yo, that's a small move, but oh my God, right? Like the Thunder get Goga, or something. Yeah, we're going to be like, oh!
Listen, Goga is untouchable. I do believe down in Orlando. I can't wait to celebrate some team ducking the tax. That's what I'm excited about for trade deadline day. There's going to be a bunch of teams ducking the tax. It's going to be good. Speaking of,
can I? Yeah, we've talked about things that the CBA. This CBA got wrong. The 65 game rule is, I think, one of them. There was a proposal that came out early when this agreement was that they were going to not phase in the penalties for going into the tax, but phase out the payments. And so I think that would have been a much better system than right now. The first dollar into the tax costs you, I don't know what the tax payments are going to be this year, but probably 8 figures. And a proposal that was there at the beginning is that slowly gets phased out. And so what this does is if you're, pick a team that is pretty good, but not going anywhere this year, and you have to get a little worse, but it saves you $15 million in both the pound amount you're paying and that money you're bringing in. Like it's hard to begrudge them. Whereas like that first dollar into the tax only costs you $3 instead of $13 million. I think that's just a much better system and does a better job of incentivizing teams to operate without this sort of artificial constraint.
I agree with that. Okay, so trade deadline coming up. Good opportunity for, what's the term that's been used? Is it second draft? Is that what we say a lot? Where a team picks up a young guy that his original team maybe just couldn't find a place for, couldn't find a fit for. But we're going to say fish or cut bait because it's really about the team that has the player in-house. They're the team that makes the decision. They've got him under contract. And there's a bunch of young guys that are kind of, I think, in a weird spot career-wise. Jonathan Kuminga comes to mind. He has had a fantastic run. Mo in the chat just said that the Warriors is like everyone on the team.
I was going to say it on the pod, Dave.
Oh, my bad.
Damn.
I thought you were just trying to make me giggle.
Don't leverage the chat.
So, well, Jonathan Kuminga has had a nice run here lately. I don't know if you guys saw him last night. I mean, of course, you saw the Philly game last night. He was excellent. He's been scoring inside. He's been a force, averaging like 25 a game over his last 6 games. And, are we at the point where the Warriors, they either need to commit to he's a starter, he's going to play big minutes for us every single game, and maybe that's what's happening right now, or do they need to move him? Fish or cut bait, guys, on Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors.
This is almost 2 separate questions, because because it's like the Warriors almost need to fish or cut bait on their team. Like the only way it makes sense to move Kuminga is if they think that there's some if there's money left in the banana stand, as they would say in Arrested Development. And I don't think there is. I think they're done. And trading young guys for the sake of getting better this year doesn't necessarily make sense. So that does still leave open the question of, what do we think about Kuminga as a go-forward guy? And that is, I think, the more interesting question, kind of league-wide. But I think we do need to acknowledge that the Warriors, and I think that we've seen over the last couple of years, that the Warriors are not an organization that is going to really try to address that first question with the honesty needed. So just like the player himself is maybe the where to go next.
Yeah, I think with Kuminga, though, they should fish. Like they're doing, they should have been playing him last year, if you want my honest. Like this is a year too late in terms of trying to develop him and all of those things. But he's getting the minutes. He's being given the opportunity from Kerr to make mistakes, which is always the most important thing for a young player. It's not the ability to play. It's can I get to play through my mistakes? And he's getting those opportunities now. And I think that's a situation for them that they need to start keeping an eye on that future. And they've kept saying it, and they've cut bait on Bagley. No, excuse me, not Bagley.
Wiseman.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And it's I think, they were smart to do that in that situation, and it panned out well for them. But like, I think that's the deal for them is Kuminga's a guy they need to fish with. And I think the same thing is, I think they need to start giving Moody more opportunities as well. And I think that's another, like, in that sense of like, that's the guy that needs to kind of get more opportunities. Otherwise, if they're not going to give him opportunities, then you need to cut bait, because now you go get something for him that can help you right now. Because if you're not playing him, he ain't going to help you.
The guy I'm worried about them moving, and maybe it's a situation where you're just saying, we can't do anything this year. We're not good enough to make a dent, which I wouldn't do that with Steph Curry. But Andrew Wiggins has come around, and he and Kuminga have sort of figured out how to play together. I don't know if you guys noticed last night. I thought the communication defensively with those two guys last night was excellent. That's the best iteration of their team, features Andrew Wiggins being Andrew Wiggins for them. I don't know that they can get a guy who's better than the theoretical Wiggins. Does that make sense, Seth?
It does. It's just it's for the bulk of the season he's been. I mean, I think that is the biggest story. That is like really the story of their season, and why it's been as disappointing as it's been is, a guy who's 2 years away from wrongly, but was rightly an all-star, wrongly an all-star starter, to being, at times, I mean, is it going too far to say he's been borderline unplayable at times or earlier this year? And he's been better recently, but it's like, it's a big contract for a guy dependent on athleticism, starting to get up there into his late 20s, has been up and down. And that's again, this sort of gets back to where are we as a team? And if there was an opportunity to kind of to reset the books on that one, what would it take to make you do that?
I mean, my thing with that is somebody's got to want him.
Yeah.
That's just at the end of the day, like somebody's got to want him. That's going to give you stuff that's valuable back. And I just don't see that being the case. This is just a fun thing with everybody with trade deadlines and stuff and all the fake trades that come out. It's like, yeah, somebody needs to want these dudes. Like, we're not going to talk about them in any stretch, but like the D'Lo and Rui Hachimura trade. Like, and I'm not, and D'Lo's been playing great lately, and Rui's fine, but like somebody has to want to give up stuff to get him, to get them, or for whatever the contracts off the books or all that stuff. Like that's the important factor there. And then so when you talk about Wiggins, who wants him? I don't see anybody that would really go out of their way that it's like, oh, we're Wiggins away from whatever.
I mean, I could see like, looking just at the player. I could squint and see that would be an interesting fit on Indiana or something like that. But then you put the whole package together, the player plus the contract, and it's just like, yeah,
it gets a little dicey.
We've talked a lot about a guy who didn't show up on the rundown at all just now.
I know, that's so funny.
Dave snuck him in. No,
I
Dave
did.
Snuck him in. It was in the text chat. And then he backdoored him in. I see you, Dave.
Oh, we needed to talk about Wiggins. Another guy. How do you guys feel about Jalen Green? Obviously a highly rated prospect. I love his first step, but I just don't think he's not a good enough player for what Houston has happening. I mean, they've just got better young guys who need to touch the ball, and I feel like a change of scenery for him. And it's funny, not in a negative way, but more in an opportunity way. He's not good enough to demand the touches where he's at. If you were Houston, would you be looking to cut bait and maybe bolster your team a little bit?
This is it's funny because it's almost a similar question in terms of who wants him and who should want him might be different questions, because I think he's a guy who I think it's fair to say he was in one of the worst development environments in the league for his first couple of years. And so where is he going to go that is both on the timeline that fits with waiting for him and can offer him an environment where harnessing kind of some of the talent and turning it into a useful, probably role filling rather than we haven't completely crossed this Rubicon yet, but I think it's more likely than not that he's not a number one option on a good team.
Is he like new Jamal Crawford? Could he wind up being like 6th man of the year candidate every single year because he can
8 points,
give you 18? I mean, this is what I'm saying about Jalen, right? Number one, the defense, it just isn't there. The shooting's not there. I just don't think he's a good enough shooter. And now he can score because he can get to the basket, and I think he can draw fouls, but he can't do that at a high level. Like you said, he can't be your number one option.
And can he do that in context of my overwhelming impression of Jalen Green is still like the first summer league game where he and Cade Cunningham matched up, and just the difference between. Now, people have said that Cade plays a little too slow, but Cade would catch the ball, triple threat survey thing would happen. Jalen Green would catch the ball, immediately start pounding it and looking to get his own. And he has improved in that area, but by this point in his career, not enough that I have confidence that he can play within a concept with other good players, because he's never been in that in Houston. And now that they have a little bit more to go around, he's kind of struggled to adjust. He was like, oh wait, Alperen Sengun is actually the guy this team is building around.
Yeah, I think this is a player that got completely screwed by the organization that drafted him. Just in that bad luck of the way things went and no structure. He needed that coming in. He needed to kind of be put on some sort of track of this is going to be how you're going to build in your NBA career. And instead he was put out in the let's play basketball kind of situation. And I think that's been detrimental to his career. And, I think Ime would be a good coach for him, but that has to be on him willing to change. But it's hard, man. A change of scenery might be where it goes, but where, he can Charlotte maybe just go, and go back to the kind of mentality, or if I don't know if a place like Miami would be good for him. but like he's getting the same. I think Ime is kind of just as tough as Spo in that sense, but maybe it's just there's so much damage and baggage in Houston that he has to be taken somewhere else. Like it's a tough situation for them. He's talented, but like,
yeah, I was gonna say part of this is talent on his own team, though. It's pecking order, right? Like he's of the prospects on that team. I mean, where do you rank him? Third, fourth? Do you know what I mean? Like of the young guys, you got Şengün, you got Jabari Smith, you got
Amen
Thompson, and then you're thinking about Jalen Green. I just again, it's going. The issue comes up when we get to contract time, right? We're getting. And the earlier you can make these decisions on guys, this is sort of like firing your coach. The earlier you fire your coach that you've decided is not the guy and you get the guy that you think is the guy, the better you are. Same with players. And ultimately, with a guy like Jalen Green, it could be better for him to get him out early because he has a chance to, rehab his value for his next contract. So there's a lot of reasons that it could be mutually beneficial. I just don't know a good landing spot for Jalen Green. When you look around the league, he's a small guard. He doesn't defend. How many teams need that guy in a young prospect? It feels like that, though there are a lot of young prospects that fit that mold already, and they're better than Jalen Green at it.
That's just Portland's MO. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Portland has 8 of those guys.
There's a broader question here, but sort of the hard part here is like he is in like the meat of this is some research I'm doing for an upcoming thing on The Athletic, and like I had to break it down into just one discrete skill, which is looking at shooting. Like when is it too late to give up on a guy becoming either a respectable or even a weapon as a 3-point shooter if he struggles early in his career? And really, for the inflection point for a lot of guys is second, third, fourth year. So he's right in the mid. I can't necessarily, because it's harder to measure some other skill areas. I can't really say that's overall where it is, but he's like right in the meat of that, where if it's still not happening, it's not going to happen. And this came up with respect, first looking at like, all right, Scoot hasn't shot, speaking of Portland, Scoot Henderson hasn't shot the ball well. That's not really a ton to worry about in his rookie year. Whereas a guy like Jalen Suggs, who shot terribly his first couple of years and has been pretty good this year, is sort of an undercovered story, I think, is his development. And it's like, okay, it hasn't been enough shots to conclude that he's now a competent 3-point shooter, but it would not be unusual for a guy to make that switch at the point in his career that Suggs is. And so that's the problem with Jalen Green is he's right in that period of it could still happen, but it also might not.
It's tricky. You guys ready to move on to the next?
It's just a tough spot for him, Dave. And and I'm thinking more, it's better for him, like you were saying, for him that they cut bait versus the organization.
Yeah, it's just, again, man, it's just tough. There's been a lot of small guards the last few years, and I don't know. I just don't know what happens with Jalen Green. Speaking of small guards, now this guy, look, this is going to sound crazy because he's a very good player. I think he's having one of his better seasons, especially defensively, because he's actually working some. Should the Atlanta Hawks consider moving on from Trae Young?
Yes. No, it's I just don't see where this is going. Like in that sense, and you're right, Dave. Like first off, he's been also more efficient.
He's a very
this is probably one of his better seasons, on both ends of the court. And I think, which is impressive considering how poorly he shot to start the year and finally kind of got going. But I just don't know where this team is going. Like, we know the whole DeJounte Murray trade rumor is there. It seems like if it doesn't happen now, maybe in the offseason, but he's hard to pair a young, another player with, unless you can find the next Klay Thompson. It's hard, man. And I don't know if there's a guy out there that can do that. And I think that's the challenge for the Hawks. And if that's the case, why are you holding on to the dude? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I just think like that's a difficult position for them where it's like, he's great. We're never going to do anything if he's our guy. And I think for them, that's why they got to start looking to cut bait.
I think he is there's it's theoretical, but there's a theoretical line above which it makes sense to build our entire organization around this guy. And I think he's just below that line. And I think
is it a height restriction? Is it like
no, I don't.
can't ride this roller coaster sort of deal?
No, but I think we're talking about a guy who is we're somewhere in the top 8, 10, 12 players is probably where, and I think he is borderline top 20 guy. Is that fair?
I was gonna say 18 to 25.
18 to 25, somewhere in there. And that's like, and I don't think that because of his size, I don't know if there's the upside to get beyond that. And it's hard to see how Atlanta continues to build around him or build with him while sort of removing him from the center of everything they do. And so that's the part that makes me think that again, possibly for both, because he's probably someone who can fit but not be maybe he's the flywheel that powers your offense, but it can't be your entire team is in service of this guy's skill set because he's not quite good enough for that.
It's just too difficult. And the hard part is I made the joke, but it's too small. You could do it with Steph. Steph's 6'3". People forget that, man. Steph's pretty big. He's pretty tall. And I think that's a hard deal for Trey in that sense. Unbelievably skilled, can make every pass. Like, I'm blown away by his passing, the lobs off the pick and rolls and everything like that. And it sets that if you have to build your entire offense to cater to him, you're not winning. At the end of the day, like, you're not going to win. And we have plenty of proof of that with the Hawks right now. And they've won, the idea of DeJounte Murray would help defensively didn't really pan out for them in that sense. And I think there's a lot of issues for them with that as an organization. And it's a tough one because that's the dude that's the face of your franchise. That's a tough decision to make. I know it's a real difficult one for them, but it goes back to the Griffin thing that we're going to probably beat that dead horse till it no longer exists in its dust. But sometimes the organization has to be honest and just be like, what are we doing here? And I think that's the big question for them to answer.
I also I don't think the 2001 Sixers sort of where you've got your small driving force, like the Iverson, and then, a bunch of functional defenders. I don't think that model works in today's NBA. And frankly, I think that, it's funny because they're inextricable. But I think that Atlanta has had some similar team building kind of foibles trying to do that as Dallas has with Luka. And Luka's a better player in part because he's bigger. But I think that almost the fact that it's the similar struggles with Luka sort of illustrate the degree to which sort of the having the having the 1 star and then like a in hockey terms a checking line around him doesn't really work in today's game.
The biggest difference, though, is that Luka is a number 1 guy. And it's easier when you have a number 1 guy. It's easier to find a number 2 and to look for a number 2. Now, for me, if I was Atlanta, I would be trying to find a real number 1 to slide Trey to the number 2 spot where I think he would be amazing. I mean, imagine if Trey Young was playing with Joel Embiid.
But see, the problem for that is it's very hard to demote the guy
right
now from 1 to 2. Like, yeah, Minnesota has kind of done that with Edwards and Towns. And we all are kind of somewhat expecting at some point for there to be a breakup between the two of them.
And that was organic, though.
That was, yeah.
Level. Right. And that was a guy they drafted. It was a different situation. If they're going to go trade and bring in a guy or go sign a guy to be a number 1, that's a hard, because then it becomes a situation in the locker room of whose team is it? What are we doing? It becomes a very difficult scenario, whereas Trey could probably do a better job, would probably accept that role better if he got traded to that spot versus somebody coming in and then that's his role now. Like, that's the hard part in this sort of the hard part of this conversation. And I think that's I said it quickly, but that's mainly because I've been thinking about it for a very long time. But it's a difficult question for the Hawks because he is also a fan favorite. He's also a dude that's like the face of the franchise. He has an entire city of New York screaming F him on a regular basis. And both of you should be impressed that I said F him and not the word.
I'm so proud of you right now.
And I think that's a whole, like, there's a fun story behind that. There's a whole issue.
I thought he was going there when he drew that out.
Look, Trey is very good. He is very good. And it's just, I don't think he can be your number one guy. And like you just said, it's hard to build around that guy. What about LaMelo Ball, guys? It's tough with LaMelo because he's been injured quite a bit in his career, and he plays for the Charlotte Hornets, which is like this. I mean, I want him to cut bait. I want to see LaMelo play somewhere else, anywhere else, like with other good players. But if you're the Hornets, do you still see LaMelo as this is a franchise cornerstone?
First of all, can I? There's a Hornet stat that I'm tracking that I just want to say at every opportunity. The Hornets are 10-12 in games that have gone into the clutch, been within 5 minutes in the last 5 minutes. They are 0-23 in games which have not gone into the clutch. They have not won a game by more than 7 points this year since 1970. That's as far back as I've gone to look so far, and I might go back further and look. There has never been a team that has not had a double-digit win in a season. So we've talked a lot about like the hopelessness in Detroit and some other places this year. Low key, I think Charlotte might be the most hopeless spot in the league right now, and I think that has to frame the LaMelo discussion.
So you think Steve Clifford should be getting Coach of the Year buzz because they're the only way you could say they're winning these games that are close and just getting blown out otherwise is that he's coaching them up because they're clearly not playing well.
Well, you know who the team that has been the most clutch overperforming team in the league this year has been thus far?
Detroit.
The Milwaukee Bucks.
No.
So no, I don't think that because
product when you have Dame as your guy.
Well, hey, listen, now that Doc Rivers is there doing his ATOs, they're going to be way better. So Charlotte, we just gotta it's more of a rescue LaMelo situation, I think. But if you are Charlotte, you have a high level guy like LaMelo, who we all agree is a high level player. He's not a top 25 guy, but do you guys see him ever being a top 25 player? Like, is that a guy, like, should Charlotte maybe try to move now, get something of value in return while they're still awful? I mean, they're going to be awful for the next few seasons. They don't have anyone in-house. I mean, it's pretty sad.
No, I think they got to fish with LaMelo because honestly, if they trade him, just fold the franchise because nobody's ever, he is the only thing that people tune in to watch. And by the way, they have some talent. Brandon Miller
can really play.
Listen, all the off-court stuff, it sucks. But Miles Bridges is helpful. Like they've had runs in what they can do. It's PJ Washington is good ball player. Like they have talent. Mark Williams went healthy. Just roll, like there's stuff there. I think you can build a team, but he can't be your number one. You can't. Here's the thing. You can't have a number one guy that plays the way he plays, and same with the way Trey used to play, and not defend and not give you that stuff on the other end of the court. I think it really hurts you as an organization in that sense, and I think that's the issue for them. But like they have to fish with him because they just got to start trying to build a team around him. That's why they traded Rozier. That's why they're going to try to trade Hayward, and he's going to be a buyout guy and whatnot. But like. That I don't think they have any other option at this point.
And I think that the hard part with LaMelo, and I think we saw this his rookie year when they were credible, is he's actually got some. I mean, he's obviously from a frame standpoint got some defensive tools. I think he can be a useful defender in a similar way that Steph has been for the better Warriors teams.
In the way SGA is.
I was going to say if they use them like SGA is used, center field.
Did you see SGA playing ball denial on Anthony Edwards at the end of that game? Like that was, Wasn't some great V cutting by Anthony Edwards?
Let me put it to you this way: he shouldn't have been the guy that's on Edwards. That's why we're comparing him to LaMelo in that sense defensively.
Yeah.
It wasn't because we thought he was a good defender,
but
Right.
but I think that this is sort of getting back to the development environment in that there've been it's just let it flow, and I think that in a more competitive system, I think you could develop much more two-way play out of LaMelo than we've really seen the last couple of years. And so it is on them to start doing so. And they have, largely just failed to provide that context.
We've yet to see LaMelo Ball in a serious basketball situation. Period.
No, they had a couple of play-in tournament runs.
Okay. Yeah. Finally, the Detroit Pistons, should they just fish or cut bait with the entire roster? They have a really weird situation with all the young guys that they have. The whole Cade Cunningham situation where he can't stay healthy. We have no idea how good he is because they haven't been able to put a solid 4-man rotation around him. What sort of decisions do the Detroit Pistons need to make here in the next week?
Cut bait with Monty? No, just we know how thrilled I've been by his coaching so far this season.
I mean, if we're going to ascribe clutch play to coaching, he is they have understood the assignment in clutch time. When they're on pace for I have a database going back 10 years, and even adjusting for their team level, they're the second highest underperforming team in clutch situations, which is, considering how bad they are just in general, that's a pretty amazing statement.
I mean,
but they've managed to bank the losses.
It's frustrating with this team because they're talented. They have talent on this team. Mm-hmm. Like when you look at the roster, you're like, you should win more games than you are actually winning at the current moment with that stuff. I don't think it'd be smart to cut bait on any of these guys right now. I think, maybe try to lighten up your rotation here a little bit with some of the stuff you're doing. Like, yeah. I mean, you just don't play him. But
it's more about consolidation is what
like they have 1 million centers, like you don't need that many. And I think there's just like a lot of stuff like that. Like they need to kind of, as an organization, figure out. But I wouldn't cut bait on any of these guys. Cade, Ivy, Thompson, Duran, even Saucer. Like those are guys I'm not cutting bait on. And I think you have a chance to really build a team around that. And obviously you got to hope for some luck and good health, but like I think you have something there with those guys, and I think you need to start finding the pieces that fit around them after that.
I mean, the part that's frustrating to me, and I know we joked about it, but you remember it was about 10 days ago where the quote came out that it was like the front office had reminded, like Monty Williams, like the front office reminded me that I need to get more on ball reps for Jaden Ivey,
for a point guard.
Yeah, or a combo guard at minimum. And it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, it's you're not good. So the most important, the important things you can do are instill habits and evaluate. And you're doing.
I'd be trying James Wiseman at point guard. I mean, why not? Like, you're not winning games.
Well, no,
you've won 6 games. Just give it a shot. You never know.
But get guys. Get some credible lineups out there. Yes. And you have to play, as you say. They've got the players. They've got a couple of good vets on the team too, and Bogey and Alec Burks. Like, you can put credible lineups out there. Let's see what it looks like when you have that, and get some real reps for these young guys. And so you can start to evaluate, like, is Jaden Ivey just an undersized 2? Is he a combo guard? Is he a star? Like, we haven't, like, he does some stuff. Obviously the athleticism is off the chart, but you just haven't, and similarly, like with Cade, you've putting him in these extreme non-shooting lineups and wondering what he looks like as a lead. Okay, he's not Luka. Okay, doesn't mean he's not like a high level piece to have on your team. What does he look like as an offensive initiator when you have a real offensive lineup on the court? Put those lineups out there. Let's give it a look.
I just hope teams use the way the Pistons went about their hiring of Monty Williams is an understanding of not how to do it. When the guy turns you down a couple times, you don't just throw more money at him, because then you have to remind him to play your point guards. I need to put the ball in the hands of, like, that quote is a ridiculous quote for a coach to say. Like, that's just absurd. And I think that's those things when you're looking at it going like, yeah, and now we're going to talk. And look, 2 years from now, we're going to talk about the development situation and how Detroit failed these guys. And it's going to be a scenario because of this. And I just think like that's a massive mistake organizationally. And I don't think they should trade any of the guys. I think they need to play these guys. And as you said, evaluate and put some stuff out there and that stuff. They're the most frustrating team in the sense of just that. I understand why the Spurs lose games. There's not a ton of talent on that team besides Victor Wembanyama, a couple of guys I like, but nothing really amazing. If you put Victor Wembanyama with around some of those guys with him with the Pistons, like, yeah, they ain't a playoff team, but they're competing. They're winning more than 10 games, winning sure as shit more than 6. Like, I think there's more stuff there in that sense. And I think that's one of those things. And I think that's just a problem that we're looking at with the Pistons.
Well, this is where player development is a cheat code, because the Spurs actually do player development and they do it in season. I mean, we watch guys get better every year. I mean, Devin Vassell is a great player development story, I think, for the Spurs. Some of the stuff that he does off the dribble that wasn't necessarily in his game when he first came in. Detroit, who's gotten better there in the last couple of years?
No, like I'll now you turn me into defending.
And I'm saying
now that they have a new
years,
I mean, yeah, but now it's
coach,
like
right? It's more
but
than
I mean, but I think just in the sense of changing the situation with the coach and all of that stuff, I think you kind of have to give them a pause in that stuff. I thought, I mean, you could probably point to Jeremy Grant coming over and then blossoming and all that stuff, but it didn't really develop. But like, look, I just don't think they have the development focus, but I think that's organizationally their issue. And I just think that's the problem with a lot of teams around the leagues, and I think that's one of those things. But just going again to just the Pistons with what they have on their roster right now, like there's not a trade I'd make that like that would include any of the young guys, in the sense of like, I need to see what we have and in these guys. And I think these guys have talent. I just can't believe they really don't play the way they're supposed to.
Like, if you're getting like some good pick package for Bogey and like the deal, but the deal breaker is, and we need Sasser back also. All right, maybe we can talk if we're getting like premium draft assets or something like that. But other than that, yeah. I'm glad you brought up San Antonio, just because it may be a little bit of coincidence, but if you look at like Wemby's splits from when they started starting Trey Jones, it's almost like it almost illustrates like it's probably a little too pat, but it illustrates to some degree like, hey, let's put these guys in real basketball situations and then maybe we'll see what they can do. And just want the Pistons to do that.
It's turned into like a Pistons therapy session.
Well, I mean, they did beat Oklahoma City the other day, which has now officially pulled Oklahoma City from contention. They are no longer America's team because they lost to the Detroit Pistons.
Plenty of room back on the bus, folks. Don't worry, I'm still
That's
here.
Right. Little programming note. So for next week, we're gonna do our Nerder trade deadline annual tradition. We're gonna come on live after the trade deadline. So tampering show is gonna be on Wednesday. Nerder's gonna be on Thursday. I think we're gonna get Andrew Schlecht in here, so we'll have an OKC defender to log on. Anything else as we wrap up for the week, guys?
Well, you can't tamper after the trade deadline, so it makes sense to
Yes, you can. What are you talking about? You can definitely tamper. It's just off season. It's just the off season.
With the new buyout rules, there's less reason for tampering. There's less. Yeah, we can get him bought out. Not that anyone in the front office has ever said that I've been around. Okay.
I feel like you've said that.
I look, the new buyout rules are actually going to bug me because
I will.
It's less fun if these old guys that are getting released and waived aren't able to sign with some playoff teams.
I will own up that I've advocated trying to get Brook Lopez bought out his last year in LA before we signed him that offseason anyway. And so Maybe I didn't convince anyone right away, but I think that long term.
How'd that signing work out?
Quite the tampering you had going on there, Seth. Quite the
Yeah,
tampering.
well, it was internal tampering because I was trying to convince people I worked with to do the actual tampering.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Illegal Seth, guys.
And as far as I know, I failed.
So fair enough.
Yeah, we'll say that on the record. That's gonna do it for this week's show, folks. For Mo Nikhil and Seth Partnow, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.